Daniel Carter never felt embarrassed about attending community college. For him, it had been the practical choice as a young man. He couldn't afford an expensive university, and life had never given him the luxury of waiting for the perfect opportunity. He worked during the day, attended classes at night, and eventually earned his engineering degree while supporting himself. Years later, Daniel was living in Houston, Texas, raising his 12-year-old daughter Emma as a single father. He worked as a senior aerospace systems engineer for a major American contractor. His desk was usually covered with technical drawings, simulation reports, and coffee cups, but Daniel rarely complained about the workload. He had learned something important over the years. A machine didn't care where its engineer went to school. It either worked or it didn't. One morning, Daniel entered a high-level project meeting where CEO Victoria Reed was reviewing a new aerospace propulsion system. Executives, engineers, and project managers filled the conference room. Victoria stood beside a large presentation screen. "We need this system ready for final testing within 6 months," she announced. Daniel studied the technical diagrams. Something immediately caught his attention. He raised his hand. Victoria noticed. "Yes, Daniel. There may be a thermal instability in the current configuration." One of the engineers looked at Daniel's notes. "What kind?" Daniel explained the issue and showed simulation results indicating that repeated thermal cycling could create excessive stress in a critical component. Victoria frowned. "How serious is it if the system operates under extreme conditions? It could cause premature failure." The room became quiet. Victoria looked at Daniel's employee profile on her tablet. "Daniel, you have a community college degree, correct?" Daniel nodded yes. Victoria smiled sarcastically. "And you're questioning a design approved by engineers with advanced degrees?" Daniel remained calm. "I'm questioning the design because the numbers show a potential problem." Victoria laughed. "You really believe your community college education makes you qualified to challenge this team?" Daniel looked at the engineers around him. "My education gave me the foundation. My experience gave me the rest." Victoria shook her head. "That's not how advanced aerospace engineering works." Daniel closed his notebook. "I understand." "Good," Victoria replied, "then let the experts handle it." Daniel stood before leaving. He placed his simulation results on the table. "I recommend running another thermal cycle test before approval." Victoria didn't even look at the pages. "We'll consider it." Daniel walked out. His colleague, James, followed him into the hallway. "That was unnecessary," Daniel shrugged. "I said what I needed to say." James looked worried. "You should tell her about your previous NASA project." Daniel smiled. "Why? Because they might actually listen." Daniel looked at his phone. A message from Emma was waiting. "Dad, don't forget my science fair tonight." Daniel smiled immediately. "I won't." He had no idea that before the day ended, his old NASA project would come back into the spotlight. In this time, NASA wouldn't be asking about his degree. They would be asking for Daniel Carter by name. Daniel had barely returned to his office when James appeared at the doorway. "Daniel, you need to come back to the conference room." Daniel looked up from his computer. Why? James hesitated. "There's a call." "What kind of call?" "NASA." Daniel froze for a moment. "NASA?" James nodded. "They specifically asked for you." Daniel followed him back into the conference room. Victoria was standing beside the large screen, looking completely confused. Several executives were gathered around the table. The video connection opened. A NASA project director appeared on the screen. "Daniel Carter." Daniel stepped forward. "Yes." Her expression immediately brightened. "Daniel, it's been a long time." Daniel smiled. "Good to see you again." Victoria looked from Daniel to the screen. "You two know each other?" The NASA director nodded. "Daniel worked with our contractor team several years ago on a propulsion systems project." Victoria's expression changed. The director continued. "We recently reviewed the technical reports from that project. Daniel identified a thermal control problem that our original team had overlooked." Daniel shook his head. "It was a team effort." The director smiled. "You were part of the team, but your analysis identified the problem." She explained that the issue had threatened months of testing and could have caused major delays. Daniel had developed a practical solution that helped engineers correct the design before full-scale testing. Victoria stared at him. "You never told me." Daniel looked at her. "You never asked." The room became silent. The NASA director continued. "We're now working on a new aerospace system with similar thermal challenges." She paused. "We want Daniel to lead the technical review." Victoria couldn't hide her surprise. "Lead it?" "Yes." The director looked directly at Daniel. We specifically requested you because of your previous work. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. I'd be honored. The director smiled. We'll send the technical package today. The call ended. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Victoria finally turned toward Daniel. I owe you an apology. Daniel gathered his notes. For what? For questioning your qualifications because of your degree. Daniel smiled. My degree isn't something I'm ashamed of. I know. Victoria looked embarrassed. I should have focused on your work. Daniel nodded. That's all I wanted. James smiled from the doorway. Looks like NASA settled the argument. Daniel laughed softly. Victoria looked at the technical documents on the table. Can I ask you something? Daniel turned. What? How did you know about the thermal weakness before anyone else? Daniel pointed toward a simulation. I looked at the system under conditions most people weren't testing. Victoria studied him, and that's what you learned at community college. Daniel smiled. No, he picked up his laptop. That's what I learned after 15 years of making mistakes, fixing machines and listening to engineers who knew more than me. Victoria nodded slowly for the first time. She understood the difference between education and expertise. Daniel's community college degree had given him a starting point. His experience had transformed that starting point into something far more valuable. That evening, Daniel left work on time. He drove home and found Emma waiting with her science project. Dad, Daniel smiled. How did it go? I got first place. Daniel hugged her. That's my girl. His phone buzzed. A new NASA email had arrived. Daniel glanced at it, then put the phone away. Tonight wasn't about NASA. Tonight was about Emma and somewhere back at the office. Victoria was still staring at Daniel's old resume for the first time. She didn't see a man with a community college degree. She saw an engineer NASA had personally requested by name.